Hello there. Well, I've been asked some questions, all very difficult, which I'll try to reply to. And I've put them on my computer, and I'm going to read you the answers. The first question was, what were some of the business or marketing lessons I learned from David Ogilvy? And I was thinking about this, and I was suddenly realised that they had more to do with general principles than specific things. When I read his book, which I did when I was in my mid-20s when it first came out, it didn't tell me very much about creative or copy that I didn't already know, because I'd been studying all the time since I came into the business. I may have stolen one idea from him which didn't work, which was to do with the positioning of a coupon in an advertisement. But he had a tremendous influence on me in the sense that he was a very inspirational writer and speaker. And I'm looking here, there's some of the things that he told me when I was working for him. We together worked to get an account, a big account for my agency, and he rang me up a while after we'd got the account, and he said, "Have you made any mistakes yet?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Have you owned up?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Good. Always own up when you screw up." I think in terms of the style of his communications, the thing that I think affected me most was don't talk down to customers. His advertising tended to be, for the most part, talking to people as though they were adults, in an adult sort of way, using adult language, not the, talking in as though they're all idiots. As he used to say, the customer is not a moron, she is your wife. I was hugely impressed by his speaking style. I saw him speaking in London, and I was absolutely mesmerised, and I thought, my God, I'd like to be able to do that, and I'll come back to that in a little while. His background was in research, and therefore I was very, very influenced by his views on the importance of research. And I realised that you couldn't do very good creative unless you had really done your homework. I learnt from him the importance of charm, which I'll come to again. He was a man of extraordinary charm. I learnt from him the importance of promoting the agency. Very few agencies actually promote themselves very well. You'll notice, for instance, that they may all tell you to advertise, but they don't advertise themselves. And he taught me that we should have principles which we should inculcate into everybody in our agency. And one of the reasons why my agency was bought by Ogilvy and Mather back in 1985 was that the principles that we sort of tried to inculcate in our agency were precisely Ogilvy principles, which is no wonder because I'd been so influenced by what I'd read of him. And in fact, I think our agency was much more genuinely an Ogilvy agency than the Ogilvy agency was. That's another subject. The next question that I've been asked is, what are the main factors that determine the success or failure of a direct marketing campaign? Well, people get them all wrong. It's the first thing I would say. I'm doing a number of speeches in Australia and elsewhere, and I'm going to give one of my favourite examples where I talk about upside down marketing. Marketers are more or less human beings, and they tend to do the things that they like to do rather than the things they ought to do. And what most people like doing is playing around with the creative. But in fact, the creative, which is very important, is the least important factor in success, in my view. The most important factor in success, and the thing you should spend your time spending more time on than anything else, is what you sell, your product or service, and the positioning of that product or service, its character. Changes to the nature of what you sell improvements in what you sell or how you deliver it, improvements in the way you position it and the way in which you make it appeal to the sort of people you're trying to get to buy from you. They will make more difference than anything else. The next thing that will make most difference, which again is widely ignored by idiots, is testing and research. Research will not give you the answers to the question, will they buy this? But it will give you clues as to what's going through people's minds, what they think, what they know, what they don't know, what they believe, what they don't believe, and of course what they think will make them buy, which they really don't know. So it will give you a clue to what they're going to do, but only testing will tell you what's going to work and what isn't. I do not know today of any organisation that tests enough. An exception, I suspect, is Google. And one of the great things about Google AdWords is it forces you to test. It's a very, very great influence for good in that respect. So the least important thing is creative, but after testing, targeting, because even the dullest message sent to the right person will do better than the most brilliant message sent to the wrong person or at the wrong time. So targeting, that's the next most important thing. Next most important thing generally is incentives. Things that you give people if they will do what you want them to do, or that you say they're not going to get if they don't do what you want them to do. In other words, a positive incentive is I'll give you this free book. A negative incentive is we've only got 3 places left and this offer closes on Wednesday night. These work very, very well. The least important thing, creative, but it's very, very hard to do good creative. You know, I've been at this game for 50 odd years, and I still very, very often, and when I'm confronted with the challenge of writing something, and this very morning I've been given 3 jobs to do in the next week, I'm immediately, actually I think 4 jobs, I immediately sink into the slough of despond and think I'll never be able to pull this one off. So creative, not the most important, but not very easy, and requires a lot of hard work. Next question, what are the keys to get people to read and respond to an offer? Well, the answer is, in the old American rhyme, tell me quick and tell me true what your product's going to do, or else my love to hell with you. And I quote actually in my book, Common Sense Direct and Digital Marketing, Dr. Johnson, of whom I'm a great admirer, the great 18th century writer, who said, promise, large promise, is the soul of an advertisement. So to get people to read or respond, you have to promise them something they dearly want. They have to do it very, very quickly. Don't flammel around, get to the point. And there is the other side, the other side of the coin. When we talk about promising something, it's not just promising a benefit, but promising that people will avoid something that they don't want. And I'll talk about that in a moment. The next most important thing, if you want to get them to read and respond, and I don't know why this says read and respond, because as far as I'm concerned, I employ precisely the same techniques if I'm writing a commercial or a telephone script or whatever it may be. It's not just reading or radio script. The principles are the same. Make it easy to read or understand, and make it easy to respond. I often quote the advice of George Orwell, the great novelist, on what makes things easy to read. And the rules he puts forward are pretty simple. Number 1, never use a long word when you can use a short one. Number 2, never use 2 words if you can use 1. Number 3, never use the passive voice when you can use the active voice. The passive voice is, say, in the Bible, it says Cain slew Abel. Cain killed Abel. that is shorter and more effective than saying Abel was slain by Cain. So that's positive versus negative. He then says never use jargon, which is one of the things that people hate most, which is used an awful lot in meetings and in marketing. Never use jargon. And he also says ignore any of these rules rather than write something that's ridiculous. I think I've covered them all. Nearly all copy ignores one or more, and very often all these rules. So if you want to get people to read and respond, you've got to do that. And of course, I'm going to talk to you about response in a minute, but if you want people to reply, you better ask them, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Then the next question, what would you say is the number one factor that makes people buy? Very, very simple. The number one factor, there are two really, hope of gain or fear of loss. Those are the things that make people act and respond and buy. They hope they'll gain something, or they hope they'll avoid something. I've said that in different ways already. This is, by the way, not a complicated business. But as Einstein observed, any intelligent fool can make something complicated. It takes courage and a genius and a touch of courage to make it simple. So emotion is the thing that drives people. Those words, gain and loss and hope, they're all emotional words. Do not assume for 1 second that reason is going to persuade people to do what you want them to do. You have to get them here before you can get them here. What elements make a great piece of copy? Well, there is the formula, again, which I cover a lot. Attention, interest, desire, conviction and action, AIDCA. Gain attention with a promise of some kind. Get people interested by enlarging upon the promise you've made. Going on, saying, I promise you this. You could say, we're doing work for a firm in Finland that sells slimming products. And we start by saying, let's say you could lose 12 kilos in the next 20 days. And then you enlarge on this, that's the promise. Then you get the interest where you say, yes, it's true. You really could. And Mrs. So-and-so of so-and-so, blah, blah, blah. So that's attention, developing interest, then emotion, then desire. You have to create desire. Again, with the slimming people, wouldn't you like to get rid of that ugly flab that you hate? And then, of course, there is conviction. And again, I was writing copy for this client in Finland this morning, and I simply wrote the phrase, you probably find this hard to believe. And then I persuade, but Mrs. So-and-so of so-and-so and Mrs. So-and-so and so-and-so, that's how you get conviction. And then finally, action, going for action. You have to ask people to do something. And when I come to talk about where people fail, well, that's where very often they fail.